If I had to make a list of the 3 most useful things to improve your photography, one of them would definitely be taking some time to go through all your past shots in a given time period. A year is typical because people like to think of a year as some kind of meaningful cycle, I guess, because the Earth goes around the sun. And choose your best shots and figure out why they're your best or what really attracts you to the type of photography. So today I'm going to take 20 of my best shots of 2025 and kind of talk about why I think they're interesting very quickly, not a deep analysis, but maybe 1 or 2 points or 1 or 2 ideas. It wasn't an easy process actually because I originally selected 36 shots that I really liked, and I wanted really badly to eliminate 16 of those shots. So I did eliminate a few of them, and I got down to 22, and I actually made this video yesterday, but I'm making it again, not because I wanted to eliminate 2 more, but because in recording this video, my micro SD card actually died. I was very disappointed. It just completely went dead. And I think that's kind of my fault because the micro SD card I was using to record the audio to was very old. I think I got it back in 2012. It's a really old SD card. And it finally just gave up. So I ordered a new SD card, a larger capacity Delkin SD card, but that's only going to arrive next week. So I'm recording back on my older audio interface now. Long story short, I have to record the video again, right? Okay, so let's go over these shots, and I'm going to be going over them in some kind of order. Not necessarily from worst to best, but some kind of order, I guess. So shot number 20 is this bee drinking nectar out of a flower. And the composition is just really simple. I like the simple, strong composition. You've got the sun, the bee, and it's drinking nectar, and the flower. I just thought it was a very nice, soft look. I actually was using extension tubes for this shot. I used a 50mm lens at f2 with extension tubes. That's why it looks so soft. And it's a new style of photography I've been trying, and I really love it. And this is one of the results that I kind of liked out of that experiment. So shot number 20. This shot actually has a lot of emotional significance to me because there was a forest fire recently nearby in Calgary. It made the sky very dark, and as a result, the sun was relatively weak, but the sky was even darker. So I took a photograph of the sun, and I added just a little bit of contrast, and the background became almost completely black. Extremely simple geometric, pretty much a perfect circle for the sun, and a uniform color, which is not something you easily get. And it's emotional to me because, I really felt a sense of foreboding of the disasters to come with climate change. As you might know, forest fires are going to become more likely with a warming planet. And I really did feel that everyone around me was very oblivious, still driving their big trucks, and the sky was being polluted with all this stuff from forest fires, and it felt like a surreal experience. Very ominous, a very ominous feeling. 18, a raptor against the sun. Actually, as some of you know, I now use the Nikon Z8 as my main camera. But the other day I took out my D500 because I like to take it out every once in a while. It's a great camera still. It can do 95% of what the Z8 can do, except of course in the video realm. And there were some raptors flying in the sky. I took some typical shots of raptor, but one passed by the sun to give a very nice silhouette. You've got a silhouette, and what I really like about the shot is the beautiful but subtle gradient from blue, a diagonal gradient from blue to red, top right corner to bottom left corner. Motion blur. I've been experimenting a lot with motion blur in my photography. And one of the shots I really like is of this raven, because these ravens were flying above me in trees. I couldn't really get any kind of shot of ravens. And as you know, blackbirds like ravens, crows are not easy to get shots of in general because a lot of the detail is going to be in the shadows. You're going to get a lot of noise, and you won't get a lot of feather detail or much else. You'll just see an eye and maybe a shape. And so you kind of have to work with that and display these birds in the proper setting so that they really come out. They really show what they're all about. And this bird flew across the sky, and the panning with the flight of the bird created a very nice motion blur streaking background effect with a distinct shape of a raven. Kind of mysterious. I really like that mysterious look. I want to try more of these motion blur shots. I really like them. I'm going to try more whenever I can because I think they're very fun to do. The next shot, shot number 16, is a piece of grass. It's a macro shot, an unusual piece of grass because it was losing its colors. As you know, in the northern hemisphere, fall is coming, and this piece of grass was losing its colors. And you see that the different colored strands in the grass created a very unusual geometric pattern. It looks very uniform. You've got pure white stripes because the sun was shining behind the grass. And overall, not one piece of grass I could see except this one had such a beautiful array of colors. And I really thought that captured a beautiful small world in a much larger world in which beauty can often be ignored. Shot number 15 is a long landscape. I like taking landscapes with long lenses. This was taken with a 500mm lens, the 500mm PF lens on the Nikon D500. Again, another backlit shot, but the backlighting really gave a nice silhouette to this shot. It's a tree, it's black and white. I really like the simplicity of it and the fact that there's that one errant branch sticking out of the top right of the tree. Something about this tree really just reminds me of the sparseness of the plains of Alberta. Number 14 is one of those shallow depth of field macros. I've been experimenting with shallow depth of field macros because I really like the shallow look and the unusual sort of distortion that you get when using lenses that aren't quite made for macro. So let's check. This photo is of a plant. I took it, I think it was at f1.4, I'm not sure, but it was a fairly shallow depth of field. I've taken many shots of this plant. I haven't liked any of them, but I do like this shot because it has that nice background and some mysterious elements of the plant, and you can still see some very distinct parts of it too. It gives an overall atmosphere again, I think an atmosphere that really captures the essence of this plant. So I seem to really like motion blur, and earlier when the red-winged blackbirds were still making their nests, unfortunately they're gone now, I missed them a lot, but the red-winged blackbirds were making their nests, and then it was very easy to take shots of them, so I tried a few motion blur ones, and this is one of the shots that just happened to turn out. Unlike a lot of the motion blur shots, there are two things I really like about this one. You do have a fairly distinct shape of the bird, but I love the way the eye looks like a crescent shape. It just gives such atmosphere to the bird. A more calm atmosphere maybe than you typically see in a red-winged blackbird. And you've got a nice background, of course, very smooth, and a slight darker reddish spot in the bottom left-hand corner complemented with a greener spot in the top right corner. Okay, so I have a project this year to take 4 different pictures of deer. And I really want these 4 pictures to be separated into different categories. One of the categories is a silhouette shot. So this is my silhouette shot of the deer. How I got it was kind of simple. I was observing this group of deer and they were kind of all together and I thought it would make a good silhouette. And so I just kind of waited on the ridge for about 10 minutes. And then eventually they kind of all moved in the same position, which was quite surprising to me because, the probability of all 4 of them moving into a cool position is not very high, but they did. And the background was just marvelous. So I think this shot is definitely one of my favorite shots for sure I've taken in 2025. I love the silhouette. And because it's on a large hill, you can see the clouds at the bottom of the sky, which is a little bit different than what you typically see in a landscape where clouds are higher, or closer to the top of the frame. This next shot, 11, is one of my favorite shots, definitely, I've taken. If not, it's probably going to be in my top 3 because it's another one of those motion blur macros. I took it with the Venus Laowa 50mm 2x macro lens. I bought that lens way back in the day, I think 2020. What I love about this shot is that it eliminates exactly what needs to be eliminated. The smaller details are pretty much gone and you got just the pattern of those seeds of the dandelion in a very nice arrangement, almost like 3 wine glasses. And you can see just a hint of the other seeds in the background, also swaying in the wind. And you've got 2 points where the seeds were kind of stopped in motion a little bit more than at other times. And it produces a very interesting effect. Plus, I love the colors. So it doesn't just have that motion blur, the perfect motion blur that I like. It also has those beautiful colors, the blue in the sky and a little bit of reddish from the setting sun. Back to the deer project. Now, I said that one of the shots I wanted of deer was a silhouette shot. The other shot I wanted was a classical sort of landscape shot. And this is the classical landscape. You got the deer in the background. You got the mountains, the Rocky Mountains, just a plain grassy landscape just after the winter. And moreover, The position of the deer is great. You got the male and the female. The male is just looking with its antlers just over the ridge of the mountain, so it seems a little bit taller, and the female is just under the first mountain, so it looks a little bit smaller. Plus, there's a very nice subtle gradient from blue to yellow of the sky. So honestly, it just represents to me the classical feeling I get when I'm out in those hills watching the deer. I got another motion blur shot, again of a dandelion. I've been finding a lot of interesting compositions with dandelions lately. This is one of them. To me, this represents wind because it shows such a dynamic scene where it almost looks like there's sparks coming from the dandelion. That main center of the dandelion that is a little bit green and it really has a nice green look. And you've got the seeds looking fairly sharp in the top left of the frame. So you've got a little bit of that extreme motion blur and a little bit of that more sharp portion that gives it excellent contrast. And the dandelion is just going out of the frame, so it really looks like it's being swayed in the wind. Plus, I just love the colors of this photo. Although I've taken many shots of motion blur, this is one of my favorite. But you know, I've been showing a lot of macros. I want to show a bird because my favorite type of photography is bird photography. I don't think any type of photography really touches me like bird photography. Other types like macro and landscapes I love too, but there's something truly resonant about bird photography. And of course, one of my favorite animals, common, is the Canada goose. Dreamy background, and I am trying to work towards a set of bird photos as well, where not just the background is creamy, but the foreground is, by using that technique of putting the lens on the ground with some of the foreground obstructing the lens, and that's the technique that allows you to get that blurred, creamy foreground. I think this shows the classic Canada goose, eating in the grass, just eating away without a care in the world. Nice green, a little bit yellow towards the top and a little bit bluish towards the bottom, so that kind of enhances the green look. Now, one of the first animals I've ever saw when I came back to Canada was the black-billed magpie, and in the winter they tend to flock a lot. This is one of the very few shots I've taken of a flying flock of birds, where the pose of each of the birds was nice. I've rarely gotten a shot where I've liked the pose of every bird in the shot. And of course, it's accentuated and made actually interesting by the center bird, which is completely splayed with its wings, whereas the other birds are all flying in different positions. So the background is also very nice. And of course, it also shows that wintry sky, that very golden blue wintry sky. All the shots I showed you so far were, of course, taken in Canada because I've spent most of 2025 in Canada. But I did spend January in Brazil, and this is one of my shots from Brazil. I got 2 shots from Brazil. This is one of them of a spider. Now, in Brazil, I was trying a project where I was photographing spiders. I was trying to get some good shots of spiders, and almost all the shots didn't work out for some reason or another. I don't think I really discovered the essence of being spider, or at least the essence of those spiders that I was photographing on trees. This is one of the exceptions. A spider looking through a little crack in the bark really typifies the nature of the spider to hide and wait for its prey. I also really like the colors and just the face and the pose of the spider. Even though the depth of field is shallow, because the face and the front of the spider is so sharp in comparison to that really out of focus foreground, it kind of works for me. Also, there's another texture here, the texture of the bark, which I really do like as well. Added a little bit of bluish red split toning, I think, to produce the overall effect. And so this is one of the few spider photos that I actually liked from that project. I think I only had 1 or 2. Now, you'll often hear that I don't use a tripod. Well, mostly I don't for wildlife, but this is one of those cases where I did use a tripod. And the reason is because I wanted to take a kind of intimate landscape of grass in the mountains. And the grass was swaying everywhere, so I took my tripod. I took my 500mm lens. I wanted it to be a long landscape because I like long landscapes. And I just took my tripod and I sat in the grass and I tried to find or extract, if you will, the essence of grass. Did I succeed? Well, I took over 100 shots, I think around 130 shots, and about 4 or 5 of them worked out. This is one of them. Grass waving in the wind. It looks a little black and white, but it's not. It's just an effect of the flare. It hasn't been desaturated or anything, so you get very muted colors from a bit of the flare. Interesting bokeh in the background that leads to these 2 strands of grass that I think just sort of completely captures what grass waving in the wind is like. So we got 4 more shots, and the next one, number 4, is of an owl. Great horned owl. I rarely encounter owls. This is one of those cases where I just came across an owl without anyone pointing it out to me. I'm not really good at finding owls. And I have very few shots I like of owls simply because I don't see them very often. I know lots of people have the privilege of seeing owls far more often than I do, but I rarely see owls. But this great horned owl was just sitting on a stump. I think it might have been a juvenile, maybe. Anyway, it was sitting there and it was in the sun, and the sun was just shining through the trees, shining on the owl, right on the face, a little bit on the feathers, and the background was much darker, and I love dramatic shots like this. So I thought it would be perfect in black and white, and it's just a very nice dramatic portrait of an owl. I like how you can't see the other eye at all. It's a perfect silhouette shot. The owl is looking a little high, so it looks a little thoughtful, a little regal in its pose. There's a tree in the background, a definite tree trunk, so you can see some of the forest environment and a little bit of leaves just to hint at the environment. And it's just overall very sharp. Back to Brazil. This is the last shot I took in Brazil. It's a more traditional portrait of a bird, the neotropic cormorant, but it's in the rain. I think the background is just very nice, and it also opened its mouth for me. It has a little bit of breeding plumage. Although I like experimental shots and taking shots in new ways and unusual perspectives, I also love traditional portraits of birds, and I think this one just turned out very well. I think it completely captures the spirit of the cormorant, and that's why I like it compared to many of the other cormorant shots I've taken. One of my objectives for the deer project, to take 4 photos of deer, is a portrait. And I think I captured the portrait that's going to go in the project. It's this one of a deer completely in the shadows except for a little bit of sun on its face. And that created a very nice bluish look in the background with a little bit of golden, so very nice color scheme and dramatic as well. And I love the foreground and the background of grass. It's not too obtrusive, even though it was taken at f6.3 with the 600mm f6.3. It still looks fairly soft to me, and I think it captures the sort of calmer spirit of the deer. Final shot. It's not necessarily number 1, but it's close to number 1. It's a shot of the moon, another landscape shot. It goes back to that bird thing I was telling you about. The project to get a bird, a series of photos of birds with the foreground also creamy as well as the background. I also used that technique here. I moved the lens so that some of it was obscured. A lot of grass in the foreground was obscuring the grass. And it's just a simple photo of the moon, but it has a very nice color scheme. The grass is almost geometric in its pattern. It's just orange enough because it's not the summer yet, so there's no green at all. It's just orange grass. And I think what makes this shot work very well also is the moon. The moon is just very bright in the sky. I think this is just one of those shots that can be taken in the early spring that you can't get in the summer at all. So I just really love the form of this shot. It's just, to me, this shot is just very pleasing, and I'm very happy I got to take this shot. I tried many times to take different shots of the moon in sort of this kind of style, and this is by far my favorite. So again, this was just my way of trying to figure out what I've done right over the past year. And this process really just kind of helps me hone the concepts I need to think about to improve as a photographer. So I really suggest that you do the same. Go over all the shots you've taken in 2025 so far and just pick maybe 15 or 20 of the best ones and analyze a little bit why you like them. And I think that's really going to help you in your photographic journey. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you again next time.